Today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search specializes in helping small law firms in Texas hire lawyers and build great teams. So if you are thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Hey everyone, Daniel Hare back with you on another episode of Lone Star Lawyers. And before we get into this show, a couple of quick updates. Robert Callahan and I just released a new movie Verdicts episode this past Friday where we do a deep dive into A Few Good Men. So be sure to check that out. It's in your feed right now. We'll also soon be dropping Witness for the Prosecution, so be on the lookout for that. Also, I want to let you know I'm currently conducting a search for a couple of positions with a Dallas construction law boutique firm. So if you or someone you know has construction litigation experience and is open to making a change, please contact me or have them contact me, daniel@varsitysearch.com. Okay, today is a Monday Mentors episode, and we are joined by Grant Blaies of Blaies and Hightower in Fort Worth. Grant is an experienced litigator who was more recently turned his attention to transactional and operations work, particularly with clients in the healthcare space. Multiple times, Grant has been a top attorney in Fort Worth as selected by Fort Worth Magazine, as well as a Texas super lawyer. With that, let's jump into our conversation with Grant Blaies. Thanks for being with us today on a Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. All right, Grant Blaies joins us now with Blaies and Hightower in Fort Worth. Grant, thanks so much for taking the time and for being with us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Well, let's start off with just maybe having you tell us a little bit about your firm and what you all do there, and specifically what your role is in some of the practice areas that you work in.
Okay. Well, again, we're based out of Fort Worth. We're, I guess, a small to mid-sized firm for Fort Worth. I think we have 13 lawyers. A total of 26 staff members. We are primarily a litigation firm. That's what we started out doing. All civil defense. We do not do family or criminal. The areas that we focus on, or at least my practice, is healthcare liability. So we represent several hospital systems and physician groups in and around the area. I also do a lot of governmental liability work. We represent the Texas Association of Counties and their member counties. So that's the primary focus of my practice. We also do some insurance defense, employment work. We have kind of branched out in recent years, over probably the last 10 years, providing outside general counsel services for our clients. We found that there was our smaller and mid-size clients who were self-insured. They didn't have an in-house legal. They couldn't afford it, and they weren't large enough to actually have a self-supporting general counsel or an attorney. So they looked to us for those services. So we've kind of branched out, and we do that for about 5 or 6 of our clients as well.
Yeah, so kind of full service then with those folks. Well, that's great. Well, you mentioned a couple of areas that I wanted to ask you about within the industries that you work with. And you mentioned healthcare, you mentioned government. What's going on in those areas in terms of just changes in the law or changes in the industry or in business that are impacting your clients in those spheres and therefore impacting your practice with them specifically?
Sure. Obviously, tort reform several years ago in the enactment of Chapter 74 with regard to the non-economic damages caps, but that's been several years, and so that had a large impact on our practice. The number of medical malpractice cases that we had, significantly plummeted. So we don't have as many of those as we used to. We've kind of evolved from that, and frankly, we represent our healthcare clients in more commercial type claims than med mal cases because of it. Yeah. Relative to kind of current issues, obviously, HIPAA created kind of an unknown, and it's still ever evolving relative to kind of the regulations that they have to navigate for purposes of their compliance. There's also the transparency movement for hospital charges that's actually kind of been a big kind of topic, and that's kind of hit the national stage. So we actually do represent several of our healthcare clients in really payer disputes and litigation involving essentially the billed charges versus what is an appropriate or reasonable reimbursement rate. So that's kind of the big area in healthcare right now.
Yeah.
Relative to governmental liability, things have not really changed there. Mm-hmm. There has been a push. I don't know how far it's going to go, but I know that several Fifth Circuit judges and also 2 Supreme Court justices have kind of questioned the continued viability of a qualified immunity. So in that, again, qualified immunity is still alive and well, but there has been kind of a push, and some justices have questioned whether or not that's a doctrine that should be either abolished or significantly reduced.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's enough to keep you on your toes.
Keeps me busy. Pays my mortgage.
That's good. Well, and just kind of winding up with one other thing that you mentioned there, because I would get asked fairly often, I would say, from either law students or young lawyers about looking at getting into healthcare compliance. And you talked about HIPAA and some of that. Do you see that, just the compliance part, not necessarily the litigation coming out of it, the compliance part, maybe even more that in-house part that you talked about, being an opportunity for a lawyer to pursue and become kind of an expert in a niche practice within that? Is that big enough, growing enough stuff there, or is it still kind of challenging to make a practice out of that at this point?
I think it is a market opportunity for young lawyers.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, obviously we're outside counsel, and so I don't focus on compliance.
Right.
I come in when there are litigation issues related to it.
Yeah.
But if it kind of depends upon the career path that you as an attorney want to pursue, if you want to go the in-house route versus the outside litigation route. Yep. But there is a need in healthcare. There is a need with these hospital systems for in-house counsel for compliance. There's no doubt about operations and compliance, and frankly, the systems that we represent staff quite a few attorneys for that very purpose.
Yeah.
So it is absolutely an area that, if you're interested in it, that there are opportunities. What is also interesting now, I think there's also a market opportunity for people that have had that experience in the compliance arena to actually go out on their own and start their own firm to specialize with the more transactional healthcare practice. There are, frankly, very few firms that do that. Mm-hmm. So if you learn what you need to learn, and then you can go out and then market those skill sets to the healthcare clients, not just representing one in-house,
right,
but for the several systems in and around the state. It is absolutely something that I think is it's a market that is, I don't want to say it's untapped, but I think it can become a larger market opportunity for young lawyers.
Sure. What's maybe something that you learned as a young lawyer that has stayed with you throughout your career and helped you as you've progressed through the profession?
That's a good question. The one thing that I've learned is that you can never stop learning. When you get out of law school, and I graduated from Baylor University, and Baylor University does a fantastic job of training young lawyers in the litigation field. So I felt that when I got out of Baylor that I was equipped to basically go try a lawsuit. Yeah. Well, I was on a level.
Right.
But you then get out and you realize the practice of law is not the same as the law school concept of what the practice of law is. And so what I learned early is you don't know what you don't know. So listen to and pay attention to what lawyers that do know what you don't know are doing.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of what you come out, and frankly, when you're coming out of law school, I don't want to say you're cocky, but you're like, hey, I've got this, and I'm ready to take on the world. I am ready to solve some problems and do justice.
Right.
It's best if you come out and are humble, and if you and focus and soak up like a sponge what lawyers that have been out practicing in your area have been doing for years. And I think that's the key to being a young lawyer, and that is surrounding yourself with good people, being humble, and learning how to take advice. And again, not all advice is something that's good. It's also discerning what you believe is an appropriate way to practice versus what you see may not be appropriate in some areas.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times bad habits can be reinforced over years, and so it's really a process of learning. And frankly, that's what the law is. I mean, that's what they call it, the practice.
Right.
You never reach that point where you've got it all figured out.
I think that's great advice. That really emphasis on humility and always learning is so good. And the way, as you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that it seems like, at least for me, this was my experience, that you either come in humble or you become humbled at some point by something.
I will tell you a little anecdote. So my very first opportunity to answer discovery. So I get this lawsuit, and I came to work for a fairly large firm out of practice when I got out, and they handed me kind of a smaller case and run with it. So I got discovery. First set of discovery that I had to respond to, I blew the deadline. And I walked into the partner. I said, I missed this, and there were requests for admissions that were deemed against me. And he looked at me and goes, file a motion. And it all got worked out. But I will tell you, I have never missed a deadline since.
Is that right?
Never. And it's also one of those things. Look, things are not going to go perfectly for you. Right. And so what you need to do is when those things do not go right, learn from it, figure out what went wrong. And in this particular case, it was miscalendared. Figure out what went wrong and try to implement processes or whatever you need to implement to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Do you remember what specifically you implemented after that day?
I implemented a kind of a double calendaring system.
Yeah.
And I also took kind of more responsibility relative to me to make sure that obviously the lawyer doesn't do the calendaring, the assistants do the calendaring, but to make sure that there's more than one set of eyes on it.
Yeah. No, that's good. So thinking about associates that you've worked with over the years and led as you've progressed, as become a partner and launched your own firm as you did, what are a couple of traits or characteristics that have been common to associates that you've seen have success?
Well, obviously hard work. If you're coming out and you've gone through law school and you're gonna start your practice, you're getting into a profession that is going to require hard work and a lot of your time. So you need to be willing to work hard. So that's number one. But what I've found is the associates that I feel have an opportunity for success are those that are able to look at a problem and find out what the key issues are. Because hard work is great and you can do a lot of work, but at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is solve a problem for a client.
Right.
Okay. And the client wants the problem solved, and the client wants the problem solved as cheaply as possible. So doing a lot of hard work that isn't solving the problem is just hard work that's costing the client a lot of money. So those associates that are unafraid to come in and ask questions, but to be able to kind of see the problem and distill it into what are the main issues that need to be addressed. I think that's key for an associate that I think an associate with that kind of ability, I believe, can go far. Because again, a hardworking attorney, there are lots of them, but you have to be hardworking, but hardworking towards a purpose that matters.
Right. No, that's good. You reminded me of when I first started working in college athletics, and I worked in men's basketball at Oklahoma, and Kelvin Sampson was my boss, and he's now the coach at Houston and is doing real well and all that. But I'll never forget a film session where we were watching the game tape from the night before, and he was focusing in on one particular player who just played so hard, just really was all out. I mean, you couldn't ask any more from him effort-wise. But the critique from Coach Sampson was, son, it's like you're on a treadmill. You're working hard, but you're not going anywhere. And just,
That's exactly right.
And that's what, as you were talking, that's what that reminded me of. I just have that seared into my mind of going in a direction that's the right direction and building on top of something else and working towards something versus just the, aimless working hard, but going hard, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
To bring that back to the legal profession. So, for example, associates are going to get this a lot. They're going to get called into the partner's office and say, I've got this issue. I need you to research it and find out kind of what the answer is. Yeah. And so they will go out and they'll start researching it. They'll bring me back a memo, and it'll be 30 pages, and it'll reflect here are these cases that address this. And that's it. I'm like, well, great. What's the answer?
Right.
Right. I want to know. I don't. Reciting the law to me is great, and you need to do that. That was part of the job. But the other part of the inquiry is, okay, what's the law? But what's the answer?
Yeah.
Does it work here? Does it not work here? What can we apply this? Give me your analysis based upon the underlying facts of this case relative to the law that you found. Give me that part. And it's those associates that can take that and I don't want to say find me the answer, because, as you know, the answer can be fairly ambiguous in the legal realm. But if I can see your analysis and I understand it and it flows, then it's kind of one of those you get it, and the attorneys that get it are the ones that have the opportunity for success.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good. Well, we can certainly envision the opposite of some of those things as being things to avoid, but maybe what's something else that you've seen young associates maybe get tripped up on, or things that get them going in the wrong direction career-wise that you would advise that they try to either avoid or fix or be mindful of?
Right. That's another good question. It's kind of the opposite of what we were talking about. Lawyers. The lawyers that come in and aren't prepared to work hard, and they have a sense of entitlement about them, and so when a partner or a senior associate comes to them and they just don't do what's necessary to assist them, if they don't put themselves out there saying, "Hey, I'm here, I'm your guy or girl," that's a recipe for not going very far.
Right.
But also, again, just churning on the treadmill and not getting the answer that's needed, I think is something that again, you can have a long career as a lawyer in a firm, just kind of doing the grinding work. But are you ever going to succeed? And again, I think it goes back to a sense of entitlement. They want their paycheck, but they're not prepared to work for it.
Right.
Lawyers that also, but again, we're talking about the practice of law. But at the end of the day, here's what we are: a service profession.
Yeah.
So the successful lawyers are the ones that have the ability to connect with and develop relationships with the clients.
Yeah.
It's relationship driven. And so I know a lot of really, really smart lawyers that, while they're very good at what they do, they're not very relationship oriented. And so they wonder, well, why is it that the client's not coming to me, but they're going to this person? Why is it that I'm not the one that's on their speed dial. Well, because you may be great, but you haven't developed that relationship with them. It's a relationship-driven business. So I don't want to say you have to have a dynamic personality, because good lawyers and their success relative to developing clients come in all shapes and sizes. But you have to be that type of person that is able to take what is essentially a complicated subject matter in an area that they're not familiar with, explain it to them, make them feel comfortable with it, and make them feel comfortable making the decision based upon your recommendation. Yeah. And so I guess that's really the key to success relative to the legal profession. We're providing a service to the client. And so your first priority is relationships with that client.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, there are two directions I want to go. I'm going to save one and go, and I'm saying it out loud so I remember it. The other I want to start with is you've mentioned hard work a number of times, and I think that we all as lawyers know that is answer 1A to being successful and doing good, having a great career here. I wonder how, if at all, you view that differently in 2020 versus whenever you started in the profession, and just thinking back, because there's such a conversation now about work-life balance, and younger folks entering the workforce are looking for different types of arrangements, different types of all of that. And I just wonder if you see it as, it is what it is. You still have to do what we did 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 years ago. Or if there is a legitimate shift even within the legal industry in the way that plays out.
I think you're seeing a shift, and I think it's a good shift, because I think work-life balance is important. You can get burned out doing this work, and there are some lawyers that just love the law and that's what they do, and they're gonna die at their desk. And if you are that personality, well, good for you. I'm not. And frankly, I've made it, especially over the last 5 or 6 years, I've made it a concerted effort. And I've got the opportunity now because I am a partner, so I can I can take that time. I mean, when you're a young associate, you're taking the time I'm taking. It's probably not going to work out too well for you.
Right.
But when I was growing up in the profession, I had young kids, and frankly, I look back on that, and I sacrificed a lot of time with them to get where I am. So, do I have regrets about it? Sure, I do have regrets about it. So. That's the profession you choose. Now, I think there is a trend away from that, and I think it's good. But one thing that we do in our firm, I have had the fortune of having several female attorneys that made the decision when we had children to kind of go the part-time route, and we were flexible enough as a firm to embrace that and not lose their talent. So we have several relationships with attorneys that don't want the full-time responsibility or time because they have other familial commitments. But we're like, great, if I can't get you 40 hours a week, can I get you 15? Because and you know what, if I need to have 3 lawyers at 15 an hour versus one at 45 an hour, I'm willing to do that. And so I think now, with that, there's always a payoff. You can't have it all.
Right.
So if you are wanting to have the work-life balance that you desire, that's great. But that does come with a trade-off.
Sure.
And so don't expect to be the senior partner at the firm if you're not working the weekends and you're going on vacations more than the other attorneys.
Right.
But I think it's there are opportunities among law firms now to keep people that have the desire to continue to practice but don't necessarily want to work the hours that you traditionally work in this model.
Right.
So
yeah.
Yes, that is a trend.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good trend.
Well, and I think you pointed out something too that's important about that, which is for you and then for the others that you were referencing as examples, is that they had already made their value apparent to the firm, right? And so it was something that after putting in years of hard work, good work, that shows the firm, okay, even if we only have them for 15 or 20 hours a week, that is a net benefit to our firm to continue to have them work here, even if it's at that kind of a pace,
Absolutely.
right? And if that's not necessarily a conclusion that's reached, if it's only been a year or 2 years or whatever, and that kind of thing.
I two partners that I practiced with for years that were just fantastic lawyers. Hated to see them go. But they made that decision, and I think they made the right decision relative, for what they wanted to do. But it makes no sense to kind of discard the relationship because they're not able to work on your terms.
Right.
If if you're flexible as a law firm, you can still utilize incredible talent, just in a different way.
Yeah. Well, the other direction I wanted to go a minute ago was you were talking a lot about building relationships with clients and how important that was. I do want to ask you about just advice that you have for young lawyers on building that client development skill, being able to, even if wherever they're at their firm or their career, it's not the time for them to actually bring in business, maybe necessarily, but to be able to lay that foundation and to be able to, at whatever point in time that comes, that they've got a network of people that can be their clients. How would you advise them on that?
I think obviously your focus as a young lawyer should be on becoming the best lawyer you can be.
Right.
And so it's good. So that's your main focus. But at the same time, you can never start too early developing relationships. Yeah. And that could be a relationship outside of the practice of law, getting involved in your neighborhood association, getting involved in outside areas. Mm-hmm. It also can be, communicating with and developing a relationship with an existing client. What happens quite often is the senior partners who are kind of one step out the door that they've had a client for years, but they're less and less responsive to them because they've got one foot out the door. This is a perfect opportunity for the young associate while practicing law. Look, email, take them out to dinner, grab a drink with them after work. The minute they call, the minute they email, respond immediately. Make them think of you whenever they have a legal need.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now it has to be organic. It can't be, you can't push it, you can't fake it. If you're kind of handing out your card going, hey, Grant Blaies, nice to know you. I'd love to be your lawyer.
Right.
I mean, I guess if you want to do that, great. But really, it's about creating organically the relationship, and then that relationship then creates kind of the catalyst for them hiring you as an attorney. Yeah. Relative to outside of the legal profession, again, get involved in your neighborhood, get involved in outside entities and organizations, because what's going to happen is somebody's going to come to you. Yeah. Hey, Grant, you're a lawyer. I've got this issue. Also, you may not be able to help them on that issue.
Right.
Don't just say, sorry, buddy, I can't help you. What you do is, you know what? I may or may not be able to do that for you, but let me get you to somebody who can.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so follow through to make sure that they get taken care of, because even though you may not be able to take care of them, they're going to remember that you took your time to get them to the person that could. And the next time that something comes along, they're probably going to come to you again.
Right.
And that time, you may be able to help them.
Yeah. Not to mention, you've now helped generate some business for the other lawyer who may be able to refer you business back at some point down the line as well on a totally different issue and different time and all of that. So it's kind of got a couple of different things going on there.
You do, and I will tell you that's another thing. Don't feel like you have to hoard clients.
Right.
To the expense of, one, being able to adequately service them.
Right.
And also at the expense of risking kind of severing a relationship with another lawyer, because other lawyers can be a great referral source.
Absolutely.
And so you're exactly right. You've got to walk a fine line. Be available, but also don't be in a situation where you are to the detriment of, one, your ability to service the client, and also to your relationship with other lawyers. Keeping that one file or doing this one thing that you're not necessarily equipped to do, because one file can ruin an entire history of potential business that may come.
Yeah. Well, kind of the last topic I want to ask you about before we wind up today is just the process and the thoughts that you have on going through hiring a new associate. So as you've done this over the years, what's something that you're on the lookout for, maybe in an interview setting, as you're talking with a prospective associate that you're looking to hire? What's some things you're looking for? What are red flags? What kind of comes up in an interview? Walk us through that a little bit, the things that are kind of top of mind for you.
Right. So now I will tell you that with our law firm, we're smaller. We don't have a structured interview system in place. It really is me and my other two partners, and and frankly, I think that we should have been, and we can be more proactive relative to hiring as opposed to reactive, which we are. So we basically get behind. We have a need, and then we kind of panic and start hiring.
Which I think is fairly common. I mean, I think you're more that's the majority probably of firms in your size and all of that. So I think, that's it. Yeah.
But I will tell you, so what impresses me?
Yeah.
First of all, credentials, obviously.
Sure.
I mean, that you could say, credentials don't matter, but they do.
Right.
And so how well have you done in law school? And what law school did you go to? Those are factors. Now, that's not the only factor. I'm not going to say, okay, well, you were at this level in your class, so therefore we're not going to look at you.
Right.
But it is a factor. What involvement did you have that matters? Okay, so on a resume, I don't care that you worked at Smoothie King over the summer. What I do care about is what experience you had relative to the legal profession that could or could not, that may or may not matter to me. Were you involved in moot court? Were you involved in mock trial? I think those are important. But that's just looking at a resume, and that's how well you performed in law school. When I'm looking at you relative to you're sitting there across the desk from me, I want a genuineness, and I want to see somebody who is dynamic, that can relate. And because again, we talked about, is this a person that I can trust with a client, or is a client going to scratch his head and go, I can't speak to this person, or they're not getting it, or
right.
Whatever. So there's that requires a personality that I can't tell you. I can't tell you what it is. It's just kind of I know it when I see it.
Right.
But it's a genuineness. So don't try to come in to me and talk to me about. Don't try to BS a BSer. Don't when you tell this is exactly what I wanted to do. This is precisely my
right.
And I know it's fake.
Yeah.
It's be open, be honest. A writing sample is important relative to kind of what we do, because we do quite a bit of writing. So if you have a writing sample, I think it's important to provide that. That gives me kind of a preview of what kind of work product that I can expect from that person. So I think a writing sample helps. What is a red flag to me is somebody who's been at 14 law firms in 14 years. So
sure.
At that point, that is a red flag. Now, there's nothing wrong with moving.
Right.
And obviously people are moving because they feel like this is a better opportunity for them and their family, and I have no problem with that. But you need to be real careful about kind of doing that jumping every year or two, because that is a potential red flag for an employer.
Yeah. I think that's good. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that we are seeing more of that movement in shorter spurts of time in between. And I do think there's a little bit more of a acceptance of it on the firm side, but there's still a lot of hesitancy that you just expressed. I think that's still the majority, probably, opinion from law firms when they see a lot of short spurt moving around kind of stuff. Right. So I think that's definitely something that candidates should be aware of as they are applying for positions, that probably that is something that the other side may be concerned about, that the law firm may be concerned about.
Well, and obviously, look, if you are not happy in a law firm, get out. I mean, life's too short.
Right.
And so I'm not saying don't get out of law. Here's kind of from an employer's perspective what I'm thinking. Sometimes, if you're moving, you're moving for a reason. You're moving because you're not happy or you're not getting paid enough, or there's a reason you're leaving. Yeah. Okay. Now, I'm okay with that again, but the more you do, the more you move. At some point, I begin to wonder: are you moving because there's an issue with your firm, or are you moving because maybe there's an issue with you?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the old adage, I guess. If every room has their jerk, and if you look around and you don't see any, maybe it's you.
Right.
So if you don't have the self-awareness to know why you're not happy,
yeah, in
the firm you're at, then that's a potential problem. Now, as a practical matter, I really don't know that, and this is where it's this is really more of a gut feel for me.
Yeah,
I like credentials. I like experience. I will pick up the phone and call references. Yeah. So if you have a reference, you better put somebody down that's willing to talk glowingly about you.
Right.
It's really more of a feel though. In my area, look, if you're a corporate transactional guy or you're doing real estate, the character traits that they may require versus what I'm looking at are different. Sure. I'm looking at somebody that is going to make an impression in front of clients, make an impression in front of a jury.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of theater. So I'm looking at also somebody that, again, with the personality that accompanies the credentials.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. Well, Grant, you have been so generous with your time. I really, really appreciate it. We're going to finish up here with our rapid fire questions, just these quick little one word, one phrase answers. If you're ready, I will fire these at you.
Let's go.
All right. Name the one trait or characteristic you most want to see in an associate.
Willingness to do the work.
Willingness to do the work. What habit has been key to your success?
Having good partners around me. And I will tell you, I think it's responsiveness to clients. Yeah.
Yeah. Your favorite app or productivity tool or double calendaring?
Yeah. I will tell you, Google is your friend.
Yeah.
I am not that technologically savvy. But I do quite a bit of researching, and obviously you used to go to the Lexus Westlaw, but I will tell you, Google. Now you got to be careful, obviously. Yep. You got to figure out the underlying source, but Google is a fantastic device for getting kind of a quick initial answer. You got to dig deeper, but Google is your friend.
Yeah. No, that's good. Lastly, favorite legal movie.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't really like legal movies because I sit there and complain about it all the time, and my wife gets mad because she loves them. But I will tell you, my favorite legal movie is My Cousin Vinny.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, and also, frankly, it is probably the most realistic of any of them.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said it. You probably don't know this, so we're doing legal movie deep dives on this show every couple of weeks, and we came right out of the gate. Number one movie out was My Cousin Vinny. So we did the deep dive on that, and a lot of fun. It's one of our favorites as well.
Absolutely. No, it's funny, yet it's really, again, one of the more realistic. That's what makes you laugh as a lawyer when you see that happening. You're like, oh, you know what? Yeah, yep. I've been there. I've been there.
I've seen that judge's look before.
That's exactly right. I've heard overruled many times.
Well, Grant, thank you again. This has been great. I really appreciate it, and I know our audience does as well, so thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
All right, my thanks again to Grant Blaies for joining us on today's show. A quick reminder that if you or someone you know has construction litigation experience and might be open to making a change, I'm currently conducting a search for a Dallas-based construction law boutique and would love to hear from you. Also, another reminder, don't forget Movie Verdicts with Robert Callahan and myself. We are breaking down A Few Good Men, and it's in your feed right now, so please check that out. And finally, if you enjoyed this episode, would you please subscribe to the show so that when the next one drops, you are the first one to have it. And if you could leave a rating and review in your podcast app or player, we would appreciate that as well. All right, that brings us to the end of this week's Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Thanks so much to each of you for listening and being with us, and we will talk to you next time.